We are back. Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Nathan.
And we are twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own. I'm almost out of coffee, which is upsetting.
I am also almost out of coffee. So
my wife suggested something interesting to me, that the next time you and I are together, we need to film a short and put it on our channel, showing us in the same room, showing people that we're actually two distinct beings and not like some sort of AI copy or whatever. Well, if you guys tuned into our last episode, we were talking about Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 1, Spoils of War. Now we are on to Episode 2, Ruins of War.
Oh, yeah.
Nathan, do you want to start us off and give us your rating of this episode?
All right, guys. So we have the kind of those 5 different things we're going to go over for each episode. We have our rating out of 1 to 10, favorite moments, what we think is going to happen next, a little bit of lore, and least favorite part of the episode as well. We're going to start off with that rating 1 out of 10. I feel bad for marking down Star Wars, but again, I rated this one 6 out of 10 because this is still just moderately interesting. I'm waiting for things to heat up, really. That's where I feel like they're going with this. Is like this is a 2-part episode. They're still on the planet Serreno, where they're trying to uncover Dooku's war chest, which honestly is really cool to see the spoils of war. Title of episode 1, that he got out of the Clone War, because he's like, they're literally carrying ships full of cargo of just treasure. And you're like, oh shoot, like that guy was rich. So I think that's really cool. But so far, I think one of the main themes in this show, like, isn't just the development of Clone Force 99, but really they're really just focusing on highlighting the growth of the cancerous corruption that is the Empire. And I think they're doing a really good job at that so far. But again, I still felt like this episode as an individual was still just moderately interesting. So I gave it a 6 out of 10.
I really liked how you called it like a cancerous corruption of the Empire, because a lot of people who were the first leaders in the Empire were also leaders in the Republic. So whatever bureaucracy was holding that temptation to grab power is now just gone. And they're like, okay, we're just going to go wild and we're going to start doing real evil stuff.
Yep, absolutely. They're results driven only.
For this episode, I gave it a 7 out of 10. I felt like it was a little bit more interesting. I was really surprised at the end of episode 1, where they didn't just like make this miraculous escape and they're like, oh, they got the cargo. It's like, nope, this is a 2-parter. We're giving you a 2-parter right out of the gate. It's not going to go well, and it's going to be this tension between what Omega heard from Echo, where he said in the ship early on in episode 1, he said, we are here because of Omega, and she takes that really negatively. And it's really like, I heard that, I was like, that's a brutal thing to say. Like,
you're like, geez, Echo.
I was like, geez, Echo. Oh my gosh. And we see him clarify later, where he's like, hey, I wouldn't have made a different decision. Like, and I think that's a really good clarification. Like, you see that really takes the tension out, and Omega really receives that feedback by the end of the show. But yeah, we see this like there's this tension to like, hey, we need to get this loot because like we need to use it for good things. Yeah, just
absolutely
rich.
Oh yeah,
and it's alluding to they're going to rebel against the Empire instead of just trying to hide.
Rebellions cost money, baby.
Rebellions cost money, as we found out in Andor. In 2 things. This is moving on to my favorite moment of the show. Rebellions. Okay, here's just a lesson learned for when you're stealing from the Empire. Secure your cargo.
Yeah, for sure.
It
did you also have flashbacks to the escape scene, to the Aldhani raid?
Okay, watching people get crushed by giant crates of money is, first off, it's good television, just straight up.
That's good. That's some good TV right there.
It's good television, but it's brutal. It's hard to watch when Nemec gets crushed and killed by the crate of credits in the Aldhani heist from Andor. I audibly gasped. And in this episode of The Bad Batch, I did the same thing. And it was just like, not again, no. Now, I was like, Tech's going to die. He's not going to live. And something I actually wanted to pick your brain about. is the injury that Tech sustains. Uh, he, he breaks his femur.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really dangerous injury from what I can know. Can you tell us a little bit more about like what happens if you were to break your femur? Because like you have a background in uh, kinesiology. I don't.
So he actually, if I remember correctly, I think he specifies he has multiple radial fractures of the femur. He even like he's Tech, so he's like, I think I just experienced 150 kilograms of load into my femur or something weird like that. My first thought was like, do I need to Google that to see if that's enough force to break a bone or not? It probably is. 150 kilograms is approximately like, it's probably somewhere close to like 350 pounds of force. So it's a decent amount.
So not quite the crate size that we saw Nemec get crushed with.
Yeah. And so weirdly enough, you're like, okay, first of all, how did you know that was 150 kilograms of force? But it's Tech, so I'm sure he has some weird, that's just part of his genetic enhancements, basically superpowers. My question is like, he's like walking around still, and I don't know if they just didn't make it as obvious as I wanted to, but it seemed like he was moving an awful lot for somebody who had multiple fractures of his femur. I was also very concerned for his well-being. I was like, he's like probably gonna die this episode. Like I was like, my theory from last episode where I was like, oh, they'll kill everyone else at the end of the whole series, not this freaking season. I was like, is Tech gonna die in episode 2? Like I was a little worried for him. But
it goes untreated for a long time.
Yeah, so I think that's a little unrealistic. So like I think that has to do I think there's probably some, because they are wearing the Katarn style battle armor, so maybe there's like some pain suppressors like inside the armor. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not super familiar. I'm not super familiar with the actual like canon of the armor. I know that like in other universes, like Space Marine armor can actually like just give you pain suppressants right away. I don't know if that's a thing in the Star Wars universe. So, but that actually was one of my favorite things about this episode was the efforts of Tech and the fact that like he gets his leg broken and he's still able to fight off the LAAT gunship and several troopers on speeders, like because they set up that E-Web turret and he totally just snags it. He's like, this is mine now. But there's a couple of times where I'm like, he's going to die.
Because even in the uniformity of the Grand Army of the Republic and their clones, we see a lot of diversity amongst the different legions, and we see a lot of different individuality between the different characters. They give themselves nicknames. They don't refer to their actual clone designations basically at all. But then once the Empire took over and all their brains basically get turned into scrambled eggs, we see that individuality just be completely erased. And honestly, it's heartbreaking. It's really hard to watch. We saw these guys with actual feelings and thoughts, and that was the point behind the clone army. Is they're based on a genetic model of Jango Fett, so that they would be good fighters. They're still individual people, so that they can outthink and outmaneuver the droid army of the Separatists.
I totally agree. When we get into our next talking point of what we think will happen in the next episode or kind of the rest of the season, I didn't know. I felt like this episode wrapped itself up very nicely. And so my biggest thing was like in episode 2, I was kind of like, okay, I was just waiting. I was like, when are we going to see Crosshair? Because he definitely didn't die on Camino, right? And then they talk about that a little bit more in episode 3, but it's very like obvious. I'm just like, okay, I'm like looking around. I'm like, where's Crosshair? Like he's going to come back. Like, where's he going to be? But I don't really know what's going to happen. What's going to happen next? So go ahead and share some of your thoughts on that.
I actually copied and pasted the wrong theory. So this episode really foreshadows how the Empire is going to treat the rest of the clone army just in general, and how I think the clones are going to respond. I think there is going to be a clone uprising, and we've seen little pockets of, I guess, rebellion start to foment inside the Imperial ranks as the clones are slowly replaced by stormtroopers, and how they're really treated as just like disposable. Like
Yeah.
And like, you've run your course. Like, who do you think you are? Even though they're perfectly good soldiers.
And they're
very
great
good
soldiers. The biggest problem, though, is even though the clones were ultimately designed to kill all the Jedi were also the ones parading them around for years. And the Jedi, because of like the compassionate nature of the Order, were like, hey, you guys need to be your own people. Like most of the Jedi, except the bad ones, Pong Krell, referred to all of.
Love Pong Krell.
Stop! He's so evil, but that's also why he's so cool. That's something I want to touch on in a later episode for sure. But he, like, other than that, most of these Jedi were like, yeah, you guys are like soldiers and still human, so like you guys need to like individualize themselves. So they really promoted that, whereas like the Empire is like, you guys are terrible at being copies of each other. Like, and it's like, well, yeah, they went under like however many years of like basically just mental conditioning, and then they like start encountering the Jedi, and the Jedi are like, yeah, we're just gonna like make you guys backtrack on that a little bit. We're gonna make you guys your own people. And then the Empire is like, oh yeah, this is why we're phasing this out, because the Jedi's compassion is still playing itself out, even though 99% of them are dead.
For sure.
So
let's move into our lore segment for this episode. You have a lot written here, and I'm into it.
So into it. So we get to meet Captain Wilco in this episode. Captain Wilco is basically the commander, of the forces on Serreno, who is tasked with obtaining the war chest, the massive plunder of the late Count Dooku. Now, being a clone, Wilco is excellent at following orders, although he is not successful.
Hold on. You said Serrano. It's Serreno.
Serreno. It's a pepper. Dude, freaking OneNote must have been like, oh, he's talking about peppers here. He's not talking about a fictional planet. So autocorrect, Serreno. I'm going to fix that right now. I'm going to go over that again because you're totally right. I didn't even notice that it had changed that.
Oh, that's going to be a good blooper.
No, man. Did I say that in episode 1 too? Oh, I think I said so.
Maybe.
The planet of the pepper. Okay. Anyways.
You could say this episode's a little spicy.
It is a little spicy. We're going to go over that lower episode one more time. So Captain Wilco dies in this episode. We get to see him executed, which is really not fun. That kind of sucks. And we see him commanding the forces of Serreno, who are tasked with obtaining the war chest, the massive plunder of the late Count Dooku. Now, being a clone, Wilco is excellent at following orders, although he is not successful against the forces of Clone Force 99, and because of that, gets executed by Vice Admiral Rampart for basically filing a truthful report, and he's like, no, that's going to make me look bad, and then he gets shot. So not only is this upsetting because like we hear this phrase like good soldiers follow orders, and he is being a good soldier, and weirdly enough, he's doing exactly what the Empire wanted him to do, and he's like, I'm a good soldier, I follow orders, and he still gets executed. So this again just continues to illustrate the continued descent into corruption, as every last bit of the Republic again is just slowly scrubbed from the galaxy, either by sending these troopers to their deaths or by some basically just shooting them in the face. So we're getting a lot of that,
and it's this kind of treatment that is really going to spark, I would say, a clone rebellion. If a clone rebellion happens, it's not going to end well for them. I think the Empire is going to completely and utterly crush them. I think it's going to be really sad. There's only going to be a few clone survivors. We'll probably see, we know Rex, Wolf, and Gregor survive because they show up in Rebels. We don't know what's going to happen to Cody, who is one of the other commanders that we see really close. We don't actually know if the Bad Batch is going to survive. We don't know what happens to Delta Squad. I would love to hear them. If they brought back the original voice actors for that would be so good.
I would die. I would explode. That'd be so good.
Yeah. There's actually a little bit of foreshadowing into Captain Wilco, and that's actually baked into his name.
Yeah,
so Wilco
I did see that.
Wilco is short for will comply in military slang. Like in our world, like our military says Wilco as just saying, will comply, roger that, or roger, roger. And yeah, the irony is just dripping from his name, his fate, to say he's like, I'm complying with orders, but I'm not complying with orders. But I'm trying to comply with orders, and now he just gets murdered. He just gets murdered on the spot by Vice Admiral Rampart, and it hurt to watch. We had known this guy for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, I can't believe they killed him.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is they're playing off the emotional attachment that really got built up in the Clone Wars series, because not all clones are bad. And even though we see a lot of these clones we really love, you see some of them get out of it. So Rex, Gregor, and Wolf all basically get away from the Empire and they start living on their own. But like Commander Cody, for example, like he straight up complies with like Order 66. Like he thinks he kills General Kenobi. He's like, hey, take that fat ass tank cannon right there and then shoot that lizard with the Jedi on its back. Like just absolutely no hesitation, like just goes for it. Yeah. And you're just like, oh no. And then the Clone Wars filled in that character a little bit. So we started liking these characters more, and you're just like, oh man. And so there is that ingrained emotional attachment that if you've watched Clone Wars, if you've watched Rebels, you're like, but the clones are still sort of good, but they're fighting for the Empire, and then they just get murdered. So yeah. There's a lot of irony there. But yeah, this series, again, I mentioned, like, I think the point of this series is to make the Empire look as bad as possible. And they're doing a great job.
They're doing a great job.
If we move on to our next bit here, the least favorite part of this episode is I kind of thought they were going to get away from this, but like Omega keeps getting herself into trouble. And this seems to kind of just be a trope of this series. And I'm hoping that, like, as you mentioned, like, I'm hoping she gets the Ahsoka treatment. So instead of being somebody that's constantly needing to be pulled out of the fire, I am hoping that as season 2 progresses, Omega is actually the one bailing out the Bad Batch, because she shows a lot of really interesting areas of growth, for example, and has some really, really keen insight. So we know from from series 1 that she is a fantastic strategist. She's one of the best of the entire team, because she basically pays off the team's debt when she is working in Sid's Cantina, playing their board game. So she's really, really good at that. She is working and studying with tech and memorizing all of these different schematics and things. So she's just as smart as everyone else. She just has less time than the rest of the unit has had, less experience, right? So she's really, really, I think she's going to be, like, she's still a clone. We have to remember that. And so she's still capable of doing like really extraordinary feats of learning, improvement, marksmanship, strategy, all of those different things. So I'm excited to see how she's going to do. And because she's a clone, I'm assuming they will go through kind of more of her rapid aging process as well. And I don't think I would have a hard time imagining that they keep her as like this child for the entire thing, especially when we look at the Ahsoka treatment. This is, you see her like physically being a Padawan, like looks like she's barely like a teenager, like super young, kind of scrawny. And then like by the end of the series, she is a warrior. Like, and they like change her character model quite a bit. And they like, and then you see her in Mandalore and you're like, oh, she's a Togruta. And they obviously model that really well by the length of her head tails as well, because that's pretty common in that species. As they get older, their head tails gets longer. So I'm hoping they do the same thing with Omega, not with head tails, obviously, because she's human, but I'm hoping that they make those changes to her character model and drawing and illustration, and like show that, like, yeah, she's still undergoing that like rapid aging process. Like, she's going to be strong. She's going to be an excellent marksman. Maybe she'll take all of the best attributes of the Bad Batch and amplify all of them. Maybe. We'll see. Well, but again, the trope is what I didn't like.
Yeah. So, does Omega have, like, is she actually going through the rapid aging process, or is she aging like a normal human, kind of like Boba?
So she is, I believe, going, and I would, if you guys have comments on this, I would actually love to hear this. But from my knowledge is that she is going through the rapid aging process, is because in season 1 the Kaminoans basically say, like, hey, the gene stock that we have from Jango Fett is starting to degrade. We need to make a clone with a fully reproducible set of genes that we can use more, and therefore they clone Omega. So she's not done all the way at the beginning, right? Like, if back when Boba was essentially born, or vat grown, whatever you want to call it, or she would be way older. She would be I guess to say it, because that I'm assuming that she was created later than Boba, And since they appear to be roughly the same age now, I believe she's going through that accelerated aging process.
You know what? Yeah, you're right. Because if she was created partway through the Clone Wars, she would be barely older than a toddler still. But she's like a tween or a teenager.
Yeah, I'm assuming she's probably equivalent to like 14 to 16 years old, right?
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I mean, she uses a weapon really well. Like she's definitely
she's very
not like
coordinated.
9 or 10. Like she's very strong. So
Yeah, she doesn't show the lack of coordination that a child would have. So yeah, I guess
absolutely.
you're right. She's definitely it's unclear to us whether or not she's still rapidly aging or if she went through rapid aging and now is aging normally. Because I
Mhm.
think they only go through rapid aging when they are in the cloning vats. Again, hit us up in the comments. This is not a part of the lore that I'm super familiar with. So if we're wrong, let us know.
They do go through rapid aging their entire life, and you see this. And I can't remember his name, but in season 1, you remember that clone that deserts and he has a family with the Twi'lek. He's
Yeah.
got gray hair, and so I'm assuming that they're still going through that rapid aging process. In the
But like,
Legends canon, if you read Republic Commando, it is insinuated that, like when Cal Skirata is basically keeping hold of all of the commandos, he does lament multiple times how these clones don't have long for this world.
but Rex lives until the Battle of Endor.
That's true. He's pretty old in the Battle of Endor.
Yeah.
So that's a very interesting question. I would also love to hear the input of our listeners as well, just to kind of see like, hey, what do you guys think? Like, did they stop aging once they get out of the vats? But they're not in the vats very long because they have to start the learning process really quickly. So I would say, yeah, they still are aging. I think that's kind of where I land on that. They are still aging at a rapid pace. The Clone Wars lasts only 3 years.
Only 3 years.
I know, so it's actually a fairly short-lived war.
Okay.
Which is kind of surprising, actually. It says, the Clone Wars lasted from 22 BBY to 19 BBY.
So around 32 BBY is when the clones were starting to be manufactured, with a million more well on the way. Which, if the Battle of Endor was 4 ABY after the Battle of Yavin, 32 plus 4 is 36. So Rex is only 36 at the Battle of Endor, but he looks much, much older.
And that actually makes sense. So if you assume their accelerated aging is like a 2 times factor, because from the time they were commissioned to the time the war actually started, these clones are only 10 years old, but they're like full grown adults, right? So it's assumed that they can be anywhere between the age of like 18 to like 20 years of like human stature. And then every year that goes by in the galactic universe, 2 years goes by for the clones as far as their age. So I think that's kind of a rough estimate we could use.
Yeah, I think that really tracks, and that kind of shows the short lifespan of the clones. Okay, that was really helpful for me, being able to do the math and kind of look some stuff up. And I think they do accelerate faster, and their lifespans are a lot shorter, which is probably why the Empire is so eager to just get rid of them, because they're like, you're old. Like they're essentially, like, by the time the Empire is taking over, like they're past their midlife point.
Yeah,
which
I would love to see
not
like
optimal for soldiers.
Yeah, I would love to see the actual like aging factor somewhere in Star Wars, because I would assume it's probably somewhere between 2 and 3. Because if we assume it's just a flat 2 times age rate, then that would put Omega as like probably closer to like, I would guess maybe 7 or 8 years old, but like looks 14 to 16 kind of a thing. Whereas if it's a 3 times factor, then she could be as young as only 5 years old. And that would make sense with like the Kaminoans realizing like, oh, our genetic stock is starting to degrade. We need to come up with a solution right away. Because if the stock started to degrade after 3 years, you're like, that kind of like that seems like it's really short lived. But again, like these are cloning physics. This is all sci-fi, so they can basically make up the rules as they want. So
and we say that the stock started to degrade after 3 years because Jango Fett's killed, like he dies. And then
they can't there's no way to restock their genetic pool, essentially.
And then the Battle of Camino, I think Asajj Ventress tries to steal the genetic stock. That was a good episode, or a good
Oh gosh, I totally
episode
forgot
arc.
about that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
dude, Camino gets like kind of screwed, like
yeah,
bad. They go from being basically cloners in the middle of nowhere where no one really knows about them to like 5 years later, or no, less than 5 years after the war starts, 3 years later, um, because Admiral Rampart and his folks, the Empire, basically bombed Camino into dust in 19 BBY. So it's like the same year that the Clone War ends.
yeah,
They're like, hey, by the way, we don't need you guys. Bye, eat
yeah,
shells. And they just like absolutely like try to just hammer everything. So
yeah. It's brutal for the Kaminoans.
it is pretty
They
brutal.
probably are not completely exterminated at that point.
Yeah, that would
Their
be
cloning
surprised.
facility is destroyed.
Yeah, that would be surprised if the Empire did complete a genocide of the Kaminoan people, but like it's also not entirely clear on how many of them there are,
Mhm.
um, because Tupoka City is only one city. So I don't know.
Correct.
Maybe we'll have to do an episode on Camino and let you guys know more. So
Yeah, but I mean, imagine a city potentially the size of like New York just being wiped off the map.
yeah, pretty much.
I think they evacuated a lot of the clones, but the Kaminoans were still there. So maybe
Yeah.
it would be like, I mean, yeah, just totally erasing a city off the map is a big deal.
But yeah, we didn't at the start of this episode go over kind of like our intro questions here, guys.
Yeah.
So we'll cover
So
that
now they're
here.
outro questions.
Yeah, so now they're outro questions. So let me just pull those up really quick.
Mhm.
There we go. All right. So our three starter questions are: what have you been watching recently? What games have you been playing? And what hobbies at work have you gotten done? So I will start just by asking you, what have you been watching recently?
I don't think I really have any update on what I've been watching. Like I said, I am trying to re-watch Bad Batch season 1 at the same time. Mandalorian comes out soon, so I may also pull up season 1 and 2.
Nice.
But mostly what I'm doing is I'm trying to write some more content for our YouTube channel, as far as like some shorts and some videos talking about the lore of Grand Admiral Thrawn and how he comes up. So I'm
So
rereading
good.
all of the Thrawn books, both Legends and canon. I'm rewatching Star Wars Rebels season 3 and 4, and
Let's go.
I'm just trying to figure out what I think is going to happen with Thrawn, because we know that last time we saw Ahsoka in Mandalorian, she name drops Thrawn, and he will probably be the big bad for the Ahsoka TV series coming out later this year.
I hope so. That would be amazing, and I would just, my mind would explode. One thing that I have also been watching that I didn't mention in our previous episode is my wife and I just finished Lego Masters Season 3. So
Nice.
that's a really fun one. They get really emotional in that show, which I'm not always super comfortable with, but I understand that like this is a series that actually takes a ton of time, and these guys are spending like, if you take into consideration production time and the actual time that they have to build these things, like some of these challenges are like 24 hours long. Like they are
Yeah,
in there
they're
for
a
the
huge
long
amount of
haul.
time.
There's obviously going to be breaks so everyone can like use the bathroom, get food, like stuff like that. So like these are probably multi-day events that these guys are spending together, and I don't think they do them all at the same time. I think they like have these guys who come back time and time again, and every week they're just inviting less people back because they eliminate contestants. So I've been actually really impressed, kind of thinking about like, okay, how does the production like tie into this? And so that's kind of what we've been watching, and we might watch some other series that are similar to that, but we just finished Lego Masters Season 3.
Right on. Yeah, I really like Lego Masters. It's probably one of my favorite shows out there. Anytime they release a new episode, we go ahead and watch it. The Christmas episodes were pretty good. I thought they were really fun. Let's see. Next question is, what games have you been playing?
Perfect. Can you ask that just one more time, just a little bit more cohesively without a question mark at the end?
Yeah, next question up on our list of outro questions. What games have you been playing recently?
So you actually got me into this next one. I've been playing a ton of Marvel Snap.
Ooh, I was hoping you would bring up Marvel Snap.
Oh, it's super fun. It's really competitive. I like it's It's so much fun. The graphics are amazing. Chews through my battery life, let me tell you what.
Yes, it does. Oh my
But
gosh.
it's totally free. Like,
It's
I'm
totally
like,
free.
Marvel just like puts this game out there and they're just like, yep, no one needs to buy anything. Like you can purchase extra stuff that will give you advantages, but like you can unlock everything as well. Like you can and you can still win with like the cards that they give you and just like
Yes.
grinding new cards. Because it's really about playing the locations, not necessarily playing your cards.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's really fun.
Honestly, we could probably do an entire episode on Marvel Snap, and maybe we will at one point. I wish we would have covered this in our mobile gaming episode, which was episode 5. I mean, this now is episode 13, and we probably won't get to another topic until Bad Batch is done, so we might be able to do it then. But yeah, I'm also playing a lot of Marvel Snap. I've even had Marvel Snap up on my stream. My hope is that I complete a playthrough of Empire War, and then I might go back to Marvel Snap.
Nice.
What's your current ranking this season?
Oh shoot, I think I'm in like low 30s right now.
This season has been significantly more competitive than the last season.
Mm-hmm.
The people who were there are like, oh yeah, like we're really getting the hang of this. You see a lot of different decks that are like, oh, this deck is really meta, or this deck is really meta. I actually introduced one of my buddies, Mike, into this game, and he texted me, he's like, man, if I see one more Devil Dino pop up in the board, I'm gonna lose my mind.
I love Devil Dino. That's actually a fun one to play against.
Really
I just don't have a good deck for it yet. Because I actually want to build a deck around having cards in the hand, which I learned that you can only have 7 cards in your hand at one time, which is a good tip to know. But I want to kind of I would love to build decks around different like specific like keynote cards.
Yeah. That's why throwing rocks into people's hands is really effective. So you can play a card like Korg. He costs 1 power. He has 1 energy cost. He's 2 power, and he throws 1 rock into your opponent's deck. And it feels bad drawing a rock.
Nice.
Rim. I'm really struggling not to say something horrifically dirty.
Yeah, thanks for not. But if it stays in there, it stays in there.
Rats. Sorry about that. My cord is like really, really bad. So I'm just going to finish this episode by showing you that I got a little orc insignia right on top of my kill tank. I got a lot of black. Yeah, so I got a lot of black down as well. I did some really bad job kind of fading in some of this because it's like black right here and then it goes gray to white really quick. So sorry about that. And again, sorry about the mic quality. So hopefully you guys won't have to hear this whole episode. But if you want to, that's my hobby work I've gotten done. Go ahead and outro us out.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We want to quickly let you know that we are also on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, but the best places to listen to us if you want to just listen to the series are going to be Anchor, Spotify, and we're also on Google Podcasts. That one's my favorite. As we continue to get more support, maybe we'll jump for Apple Podcasts. That's a paid service, so we'll see. Currently, we are making absolutely this much income on this podcast. We are totally just doing it for funsies. And honestly, I love it. I'm having such a blast. I think it's so fun. I love just being able to just dump my mind onto a page and discuss it with you. And yeah, it's so fun. But anyway, thanks everyone for being here. We really appreciate your listening. I've added little spots of sand onto my outriders, and then I'm going to add rocks and then bushes as well. And then I'm going to rim each of the ones with this Balthazar gold. It's kind of a bronzy metal, so all of my guys are going to have the same listenership. We really appreciate you being here and just the support that brings us. And just hope you can join the conversation as well. And until next time, may the force be with you.
See you guys.
Close your eyes.